G'day everyone, welcome back to another video of the good, bad and ugly on the channel. We're here for the round 5 review of the 2023 AFL season. Gather round just passed upon us. It truly was a jam-packed round of football and plenty to go over. If you're going to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, that'll be much appreciated. And let's get straight into it. Rightio, so we'll kick it off with my first good. We'll start off with the first game of the round. It was the Adelaide Crows taking the Chocolates over the Blues, and they are seriously starting to get things clicking now. They are absolutely on fire these past 2 weeks, and I've been saying on the channel a few times, they have just lacked a bit of that efficiency. They've been a team that's able to really, pepper the scoreboard and all those scoring shots, but they've just been unable to really execute in front of goal. But now they've got that all in place. They seriously looking like a powerhouse at the moment. Last week's win against Fremantle was beautiful, but to beat a pretty well-respected side, a tough side to beat of the Carlton Footy Club by a convincing margin, kicking over 50 points at quarter time, they are seriously quite a genuine team to consider for a final spot this year. Another thing I've been saying, and I'll say again, they are the best team in the competition with scoring shots per inside 50. Just how they use the ball inside 50 is remarkable as well. You have the likes of Jordan Dawson, who's on fire, kicking lace-out deliveries to their forwards. 𝐓𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿 and Fogarty back into the side, kicking goals for fun. He kicked 5. Taylor Walker, like a few of their veterans really working nicely. They don't really play a boring style of footy when going inside 50. They like to lower their eyes, they change the angles, and the pressure inside forward 50 is very good too. Just pretty much everywhere across the park is really clicking at the moment. They're a team that might not have the most talented list, but just everyone is playing their part at the moment. I think it's a mixture between genuine stars of the likes of Jordan Dawson, Isaac Rankin coming through the doors, Joshua Shelley, Darcy Fogarty, 𝐓𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿, and then you've got the more of the grunt players. Rory Laird's been playing some good footy as of late. Ben Keys down forward, kicking 3 goals. Their defence held up really well too. I thought Murray had a great game. 𝐷𝐷𝐿 was very good as sort of that, intercepting defender. They're scoring a lot of points. They're playing a high pressure style of football. This all translates to potentially footy in September. And if the Crows keep it up, they will for sure be a chance to play footy in September. Moving on to my next good in this video today. Possibly one of the best wins out of any footy club on the weekend. It was the Bombers' huge upset over the Melbourne Demons. Now, it wasn't one of these games where it's just like, the Demons played an off sort of footy today. They played poor. I just think the Bombers made them look poor. Their pressure off the turnover, their efficiency in their forward half. The main thing was to that win as well, they just seemed hungrier. They wanted to win more. They were excellent at ground level too. I just think with the Demons, they were struggling a bit in the air. They struggled a bit with scoreboard pressure, but when the ball was on the deck, there just seemed to be a lot more Bombers numbers in there. They were floating numbers forward and converting really well on the scoreboard too. I mean, players kicking goals for fun. I thought Langford playing as a bit of a utility, sort of a key forward at the moment, has been excellent. They're a team at the moment just with really hard workers. I think Nick Martin sort of working up and down the ground, sort of a high wingman, can go for kick goals, has been very good, and he was awesome in that game. I feel like their midfield's going really under the radar at the moment. You've got Darcy Parish, who's just been very clean with extracting the ball from the contest, always around it. Merritt, of course, with all those score involvements. And you've got Phillips and Draper, who both had fantastic games. I think they had like 5 or 6 goals between them, working as sort of forwards and midfielders. Draper was the difference in that game, almost bursting through the stoppage, kicking some awesome goals, but just in general, they wanted that win more. I thought their pressure, this is where they've been good. Their pressure off the turnover has been good. I think they've had a lot of players that make the sacrifice to leave their man and force the turnover, and they've been good at ground level too. And the other important thing is they are setting the expectations low. Brad Scott is wanting to keep a lid on things, so when do we want to consider this team for finals? At least they're a side that internally aren't getting carried away with results. They simply tick this off as a very, very impressive win, and they move on next week. And if they can continue it, show the form, another team that could be smoky for finals this year. Moving on to my final good in this video today. It's a bit of a corny one, but just the gather round itself. I thought it was a really entertaining round of football, not only as a viewer from watching it on the TV, but just the people that went there, just everything in general. The extra round of footy that we all get to enjoy, the fans that came across from every part of the country, especially a lot of the content creators too, looking like they had all a great time coming over into the one city, and all teams playing in the one city too. It just felt like a big festival of footy that everyone was able to really get around, and the good news is this will continue to keep on going. for the next, I think, 4 years in Adelaide. So they get to continue growing the brand of football down there in South Australia. I wasn't really reluctant, but when I first heard, I'm like, oh, how will this fare out, all teams in one city? But it looked to be awesome. Of course, the games in Northern and that one at Adelaide Hills sort of gave it a pre-season and suburban footy vibes. It was great to see. Just thought the whole round in general was really entertaining, really fun to watch. And really keen for this to be going on for the next 4 years, because not only that, it's an extra round of footy, extra round of football that all us fans get to enjoy. It is, of course, taxing for the clubs itself, but it does add a bit of a challenge too. So I think it's just good, all in general, really entertaining round of footy, and yeah, keen to see more of it in the coming years. Now we'll move on to the 3 bads of the video, kicking off with the first one. The Tigers' loss on Friday night was a pretty tough pill to swallow, really sour, and do we ask the question, is this now the start of an end of the era? Now, this is not a statement, it's just a question to ponder on. I don't think necessarily it is. I still think they're a genuine chance to make finals and maybe win a final or two if they really build momentum, but you can start to see the transition now. I know the Tigers have a lot of injuries. I mean, Lynch was out, no Broad and no Graham, etc., but the players that they had to put down the park, a lot of players that have played less than 10 games, and you can start to see the gap of the experienced players and the younger players. You just look at the players under 23 years old and you think, who are their next stars? I know Josh 𝐓𝐿𝐴 is another one, young player that is injured, of course, but I still think they're a team that's pretty heavily reliant on the older players. Of course, you've got the likes of Prestia and 𝐓𝐿𝐴, of course, Jack Riewoldt, and their foreline as well seem to struggle a bit. Samson Ryan seems to be there at the moment on their list of future key forward. Of course, he's always going to be, on and off. He still looks like he's a bit away from showing his projected forward and ruck craft. Their foot skills, and as I said on last week's episode, their efficiency in their forward half is very unlike them. They're one of the lowest ranked teams in the competition with scores from turnovers. That's usually where they're very good. And a lot of turnovers. They were very undisciplined too, giving away a lot of free kicks and of course 50-metre penalties. There's certainly a little bit of upside with them in around that third term, able to kick those goals in the row and show that when they can hit the scoreboard, when they can hit their targets, they are a dangerous team, but they're just not very sustainable on doing it at the moment. I just look at it now as Tim Taranto and Jacob Hopper, massive deals. I think they played okay games, but if you look at them now with how they've played, I feel like they've not had awful starts this season, but are these two players right here going to be the difference makers from them making September and maybe winning another flag? It just doesn't look like it so far. I just think they have many problems with scoring, and their defence was pretty inconsistent as well, and that fourth term, how they just dropped their heads and conceded over 6 or 7 goals in that final quarter. It was a pretty disappointing performance for them in the end, the Tigers. And yeah, the question asked now, are they starting to transition into a bit more of a rebuild? And is this dynasty, is this era over? Now, what a dynasty it was back in those days, but they just seem off the pace a bit, especially with their efficiency and scores off turnover. Disappointing loss, but I'm sure they will mount back on the horse and rebound next week. For my next bad in this video today, we'll move to the Carlton Blues loss against the Crows. The Crows were superb, but meanwhile for the Blues, well, I was reluctant on tipping them anyway because they have yet to win a game at Adelaide Oval. Venue aside, they played poor. They played really concerning, and this is the issue with Carlton that I've always been saying. Their gap between their best and worst plays is quite a substantial gap, and I think we saw it again on the weekend. In general, their pressure and their intensity really dropped off throughout many parts of that game. Sure, they made a little bit of a comeback here or there and kicked a few goals in the row, but it was just a lack of sustainability to really hit the scoreboard and get the ball rolling and potentially win the game. And how I felt the Blues were bland was just their very, what I like to call vanilla ball use, especially inside 50. They did a little bit of this last week against the Kangaroos, but with a bit more of a respectable and tougher footy club of the Crows, they were really able to go to homework on the Blues inside 50 entries. Pretty much all I could remember was just big looping balls from Akers and Cripps rolling in the heads of Curnow Mackay, and then you'd have Dooday and Butts and Murray leave their man, go to the 3-on-1, punch it through, take the intercept mark. It was just on repeat all night. Just very boring and very one-paced ball movement across the whole evening of that game. And there just seems to be at the moment a lack of spark and creativity with a number of their goals. There just barely isn't enough goals from a stoppage or just bursting through the clearances and getting the inside 50, etc. It was just pretty boring end to end. A lot of turnovers, pretty shaky with a few of the kicks as well, plamming out in the full, etc. yeah, there was just a few issues, as stated just then, with the Blues at the moment, and I just think they need to be a bit more bolder with their ball movement and try and cut the angles and be a bit more creative, especially going inside 50. And for the final bad on this video today, we'll move on to the Melbourne Demons. And look, I like to say it is a blip on the radar. It could be possibly. I still think it's a bout of this round because they just didn't want it. I felt like they were pretty... No, I wouldn't really necessarily say complacent heading into the game, but just how they played, they just struggled really at ground level. It just felt like they didn't want it enough compared to the Dons. And the main thing as well was with Lever out, it really hurt them in their defence structure-wise because he's the man that usually leaves his opponent to go and take the intercept mark. They couldn't really do that, and at ground level inside 50, I thought they were pretty poor. And the other thing as well was an issue last year was their inability to put on enough scoreboard pressure. That's where I felt like they really struggled, especially in the second and third term. All of a sudden, they couldn't kick a goal. It felt like a goal was an absolute premium for them around that part of the game, and it was just pretty much game over at that fourth quarter. Of course, Clayton Oliver had 20 disposals in the last term, but he really struggled to make an impact on the scoreboard, and the whole Demon side in that second half really struggled as well. And it was pretty much, I guess you could say, pretty much game over by half time. But as the title suggests, yes, I still think it is a blip on the radar, but a few really quiet games. You know, Stephen May, I think he only took like one intercept mark for the whole game. He was dropping marks. He wasn't very clean at ground level. Brodie Grundy was pretty much convincingly beat around the ground by Phillips and Draper, who just seemed a lot more physical and a lot more accountable. Just a team on the day that didn't want it more. A bit of a concerning loss, but hey, they'll get Gawn back in, maybe Lever back in, but yeah, it's just one to reset. And I guess in sort of a positive way, you know, this is how the competition's going to be. There's yet to be any really perfect team so far, but for the D's, maybe a blip on the radar, but it was a really disappointing performance from them. Moving on to the three uglies now, we'll kick it off with my first one. It's possibly the most controversial one, but the booing on Jason Horne-Francis is... Look, it is unacceptable. I know people have their opinions, but how I look at it is I'm a neutral in this situation. I'm not a North nor a Port Adelaide fan. I felt what Horne-Francis did to leave North Melbourne in his first year was, you know, obviously you think about, hey, you know, it shows a lack of loyalty, but it's what's the best for him personally and his family. If he wants to go home, so be it. And look, the ice bath jokes and everything, it's all a bit of a laugh at the end of the day, but it's seriously now maybe getting a little bit too far. I get all the slander on social media and etc., but the booing constantly this guy gets, he had it against the Pies and he had it again on the weekend whenever he touched the ball. I feel like it's going too far. And for me, the vision with Ken 𝐸𝐿𝐼 getting around Jason Horne-Francis, I tell you, it was honestly just some of the best vision I've seen this year. It was remarkable. His fourth quarter was sensational as well. He had the 11 touches, a few score involvements too. He really lifted, and he's having some good patches so far this year. He's not setting the world alight, but he is having some really good quarters and patches. He's building nicely. He still is a second-year player, and he's still young. And what 𝐸𝐿𝐼 said in the press is saying people really need to grow up and all that stuff and really reconsider about booing on him. I think it is not on. He is young, yes. I know people will say, oh, but, you know, this is AFL, it's a men's business, etc. But at the end of the day, you can call him a traitor all you want, but we've got to act. You know, I've got to act a bit more classy about it, especially from both ends of the spectrum. If you're a North Melbourne supporter, you know, a Collingwood supporter, etc., or even just anyone in general who has an opinion on it. So, yeah, I feel like it is going a bit too far. Again, you know, you can make the jokes, etc. That all happens, but there's a line in the sand where crossing it, I feel like it has been crossed now with all this just excess booing. I feel like it has to pretty much stop. But yeah, he had a pretty good game the weekend, so all the best to him. For my next team now, we'll stick with the former side of Jason Horne-Francis' team, North Melbourne, and they were shocking in the air, and especially on defensive transition against the Lions on the weekend. Now, I get it with North Melbourne. They're going to have some good quarters and they're going to have some poor performances in the end, some poor quarters. I said in my footy tipping video, I'd felt for maybe a quarter or two, North Melbourne would really push the Lions, and that's what happened in the first quarter. I felt like they really brought it to the sword, played some good footy, but then I don't know what happened. They just fell apart in that second half. Their defensive transition, I don't know why it happened, but they just simply allowed Brisbane Lions players to be at the back. There was Cam Rayner and there was Charlie Cameron, kick over the top. It's just, you know, a 2-on-0. Daniher at the back for a goal. And speaking of Joe Daniher, he took, I think, 8 or 9 marks inside 50. It was in total 33 inside 50 marks to 9. 33. Teams struggle to get about 6 or 7 sometimes a game. 33 is, I think, the 5th highest in, I don't think AFL history, but probably since 2000. It is just an absurd number how North are able to concede that amount of marks, especially inside 50, where it does really hurt the scoreboard, or especially conceding. It's probably something that North do want to get on top as soon as possible, because if they just continue to show that, they're just going to be starting to drop game after game, left, right and centre. And for the final ugly in this video today, we'll move to the Friday night game again, the Swans and the Tigers. Jake Lloyd's should have been goal, but wasn't, because the footy post was not taped up. It's a bit of a laugh, of course, but at the end of the day, it's a serious matter, because I think, as a billion-dollar organisation of the AFL, no matter if it was a close game or a big game, that is just unacceptable, and someone has to be held accountable for that. The footy post, yes, of course it's a post, not saying it's being robbed or not, it should have been a goal. By rules, it was a point, because anything that's attached to the post, if it hits it, it's a point, and that's what happened. Unfortunately for Jake Lloyd, but it was a bit of an unacceptable thing to see. Definitely deserves the ugly tag. I'm not a Karen or anything. I'm not going to complain to the AFL or anything. Trust me, I'm not that bad, but seriously, little things like that can, in the end, potentially cost footy games. I know it really didn't in the end, but it will eventually if we let things slip like that. So yeah, I just think in general, that stuff has just got to be ticked off, and we should never ever see that again with just a huge organisation and sport AFL football is. So over on, there was another episode of the Good, Bad and Ugly for gather round of the 2023 AFL season. As I'll say again, was a really entertaining round of football, all the games in Adelaide, and keen for this to happen until I think 2026. So thumbs up, all smiles from me down over this end. If you're going to enjoy today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. That'll be much appreciated. Power rankings will be out tomorrow. They're back on the channel, and of course the footy tips will be out later in the week as well. And yeah, until next time, I will talk to you later. See you later, fellas.